A snowy morning in Toronto, a trade fight that's drifting from courtrooms into statehouses, and a rough night for the Raptors. And later in the brief, a quick story that might actually change how Blue Jays games feel, pitch by pitch. Toronto's weather first. Expect snow today, with a high near 2 and a low around -6 degrees Celsius. In the city, festival season planning is getting a financial reality check. A Toronto Council committee has unanimously backed a festival strategy meant to help stabilize events facing higher costs, especially security and permits, plus softer sponsorship money. The city put more than $2.5 million into festivals last year, but organizers say it's increasingly not enough to keep lineups and street closures at the same scale. The key point here is timing. Decisions for summer events get locked in months ahead, so budget pressure now can mean smaller festivals later. On the court, the Raptors let a big one get away late. They lost 116-107 to Oklahoma City, in a game Toronto briefly rescued after being down 25 late in the third. The Raptors clawed all the way back to tie it in the fourth, then couldn't finish, while a short-handed Thunder team got key buckets and stops down the stretch. Toronto is on a back-to-back, and Jakob Poeltl sat with a lower back issue. And now, turning to the bigger stakes, the Canada-US tariff fight, and how Ontario's premier says he plans to push back inside the U.S. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is framing the moment like this. The legal space for some Trump-era tariffs is tightening, but the policy risk is still very much alive. Here's what changed. The U.S. Supreme Court has struck down a number of tariffs that President Trump imposed by using the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. For Canada, that's significant because it challenges one of the legal pathways used to move fast on trade restrictions. But almost immediately, the fight shifted to a different tool. President Trump moved to Section 122 of the U.S. Trade Act to impose a new global tariff, initially described at 10%, and later raised in his remarks to 15%. Most Canada-US trade remains exempt under CUSMA, but not everything fits neatly inside that exemption, and the bigger issue is uncertainty. Companies plan around stable rules, not daily recalculations. Ford's message today was that the court decision is a positive message, but not a resolution. He argued the walls are closing in on Trump, politically and legally, while also warning Trump still has multiple levers left. The risk here is that tariff policy doesn't depend on only one statute. Ford pointed to the next pressure points, the upcoming CUSMA review, and the continued use of Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, national security-based tariffs. Those are the ones that have hit Canadian steel and aluminum in the past, and have also been applied to things like copper, some auto parts, and lumber and other wood products. So what's Ford's play? Governors, starting with regional meetings in South Carolina and Utah, making calls first, and then taking a U.S. trip. The idea is to build state-level pressure against broader tariffs ahead of the U.S. midterms when economic pain at home becomes politically louder. Ford also says he's coordinating with the federal government and Prime Minister Mark Carney, along with other premiers, and he's blunt about contingency planning. Hope is not a strategy, and Canada needs options if CUSMA is threatened. Mid-episode reset. This is no longer just a Canada versus Washington story. It's becoming a multi-level lobbying effort. Courts, federal agencies, trade agreements, and now U.S. state politics, because the tools and timelines are different in each lane. Two quick supporting signals to keep an eye on. First, the U.S. is warning Europe about Buy European defense procurement rules, arguing they could shut U.S. firms out while European companies still access American markets. That matters in Canada because Ottawa has just rolled out its own defense industrial strategy, leaning domestic, and disputes like this can spill across allied supply chains. Second, Transport Canada has certified Gulfstream's new G700 and G800 business jets, shortly after Trump threatened decertification and tariffs on Canadian-made aircraft unless Canada approved certain models. The approvals arrived while the FAA still has de-icing and fuel system concerns under a temporary exemption. There's no proof political pressure drove the timing, but the perception risk is real. Regulators want to look safety-led, not deadline-led. Now that Blue Jays note from the top, the one that changes the feel of a game. This spring, MLB's automated ball strike challenge system is arriving with a strict in-game hierarchy for Toronto. Manager John Schneider says Davis Schneider and catcher Alejandro Kirk get the early green light to challenge ball and strike calls. A couple of other veterans may get a yellow light, and most players start on red, meaning limited or no challenges until they show they can reliably read the zone. Each team gets 2 challenges per game, and you keep them if you're right. The final piece to watch is the strategy, when to spend a challenge, and whether tight late-inning moments start turning on a single call at a single decision. Before we close, a travel note. Canadian officials are urging caution in parts of Mexico after violence following the reported killing of a major cartel leader. Some flights were temporarily suspended and then resumed, and there's been a sharp jump in Canadians registering with global affairs in Mexico. If you're traveling soon, the practical guidance is unchanged. Follow local instructions and don't head to an airport unless you have a confirmed flight and it's safe. What to watch next? Ford's governor outreach, whether it produces public pushback from states that trade heavily with Canada, any signals on the next CUSMA timeline, and whether US-EU defense procurement tensions start affecting Canada's own industrial plans. That's the brief for Wednesday, February 25th.